Welcome back to New Rockstars. I'm Erik Voss, and this is a breakdown of Invincible, Season 2, Episode 1 on Amazon Prime Video. And this video is sponsored by Squarespace, the all-in-one platform that makes launching your own website a breeze. We are back covering this amazing series, episode by episode, for all the Easter eggs, animation details, deeper layers of meaning that you might have missed. I love this show. It's honestly one of the best superhero adaptations that is on TV right now. So we're gonna break down every episode of the season. It's gonna be a lot of fun. All right, we open this season on a desolate terrain as one hole is blown open in the cloud, followed by another. For a second, we assume we are back in another aerial battle between Invincible and Omni-Man, but no, these holes are actually foretelling other portals through the multiverse that this season premiere will take us through, as these are actually blown open by sonic blasts from Invincible battling the Immortal, whom we last saw in the Season 1 kaiju battle, bisected by Omni-Man, but his remains were gathered by the GDA with the intent to resurrect him. But that never happened to this Immortal because we are in an alternate reality, as a dark version of Mark quips,
"I've been hit harder before. Like, way harder."
So arrogant, just like your father.
As they fight, Mark asks Immortal to trust him.
After what Omni-Man did? After what you did?
So this Mark has been, in the past, beaten bloody by Omni-Man. He just had a different reaction to it. Later, Angstrom Levy explains that in most other dimensions, the battle ends with Mark and Omni-Man teaming up. So it tells us that in the one dimension that we have been following, there's something unique about this Mark, and I think we're gonna find out what that thing is this season. While Immortal fights mid-air, mostly with punches, Mark begins to use kicks and knee attacks, rolling kicks, more and more, but Immortal gets wise to this and chokes him, but Omni-Man swoops down, slicing through Immortal's arm so precisely that he leaves Mark untouched. But the Immortal tries to apply some of the lessons he learned from fighting Mark using lower body attacks against Omni-Man, but it doesn't work. His other arm gets snapped and Omni-Man beheads him, and Mark savagely crushes his skull. Yeah, for anyone just tuning into this season, not knowing what the show is, it gets bloody like this. And it's just so unsettling to hear Steven Yeun's cheery voice delivering a cold, oppressive recorded message. He says, "People of Earth," as in he no longer identifies with his human half, only his paternal Viltrumite lineage. He says,
"The more you resist, the worse this gets. We didn't destroy your cities. You destroyed them by fighting back.
A hooded figure walks up to the massive video screen.
And if you still think you can stop us, don't forget, I'm invincible."
Ooh, the fact that we don't cut to the title text of the word invincible, we hear him say it in context, it just tells us that we are in kind of a backwards, bizarro world. And I love how this episode keeps giving us little fake outs of the word invincible like that. It waits to do this until a precise moment. But the imagery here of a small figure in front of a large Big Brotherian screen seems inspired by the famous 1984 Apple Macintosh Big Brother Super Bowl commercial, where a revolutionary figure charges up to a screen of Big Brother and smashes it with a sledgehammer. This hooded guy is Angstrom Levy, voiced by Sterling K. Brown. And this episode is kind of his origin story, even though he's been pretty busy up until this point. Angstrom takes a hidden entrance to a school bus to an underground subway tunnel where we can see train cars have been turned into housing units alongside a bunch of tents, and the track wells are filled with these glowing green rivers. We are reminded of the train station where the most brutal carnage took place in Mark and Nolan's fight in the Season 1 finale. Levy meets up with Robot with his original Rudolph Connor's body in a mobile suit. Back in Season 1, this original body died during the cloning process with the Mauler twins before Connors cloned himself using Rex's DNA to become the young Rudy Connors. But this universe's version of Adam Eve indicates Rex died.
The Immortal led them away. We're safe.
Yeah. That's what Rex thought too.
We see how Eve has a shaved head and scars on her face, which sounds like they were given to her by Mark.
"Hey, Eve, you look good."
This whole idea of a dystopian society with superheroes being hunted down while one of them uses portals to escape failure after failure recalls the opening to 2014's X-Men Days of Future Past. One of the best X-Men films to date, in my opinion, the best depiction of time travel in a Marvel movie. And I say Marvel movie because Loki, the series, is the best version of it. But like Avengers Endgame's time travel logic was all over the place, and X-Men Days of Future Past is a really good time travel movie that uses consciousness displacement. But it's a movie everyone sleeps on because, you know, it defies the narrative that from 2012 onward, the MCU dominated everything Marvel, but it's not true. 2014's Days of Future Past, 2016's Deadpool, and 2017's Logan were better than like 90% of MCU movies. I don't care what anyone says, fight me on it. And yes, while you can say that Angstrom Levy is ripping off what the MCU is doing with Jonathan Majors as Kang, someone who has gone to war with his variants, this depiction of Angstrom Levy actually comes from Invincible comics that predated what the MCU is doing with this version of Kang. Like, Kang as a character in the Marvel comics emerged in the 60s, but they didn't have this particular take remake of every incarnation of Kang, being variants of one conqueror until like the late 90s, and it still didn't really even make sense, I would say, until the Avengers Unleashed storyline in 2017. Like, if Marvel wants to move away from Kang, I won't be too upset, because Kang as a character is just kind of like a mess. Give us Dr. Doom. Anyway, so Omni-Man actually uses the same attack combo on Robot that he used on the Immortal. Slice the arm, lacerate the whole body, lacerate the center part of the body, either the neck or the torso. Levy acquired a canister of what they're calling null energy that Robot blasts at Omni-Man, releasing this purple colored glow with a dark interior, visually similar to the Darksaber of Star Wars, but it's a cool way of showing antimatter of energy that defies the principles of nature because it's like negative colors, right? They hope it's gonna be a kind of kryptonite for Omni-Man, but it doesn't work. Omni-Man smashes Connor's pod through a crowd of people and it creates a pool of their blood. And he says,
"Someday, you too will die."
Sure, but you should have died at birth.
Oof. His fluid leaks out like tears. Now, Omni-Man comes from a Spartan-esque Viltrumite society that never would have allowed beings born with genetic deformities to live. Mark cracks Eve's neck, but it's even worse than we thought.
She's not dead, just paralyzed.
Huh, so that's what you were practicing on those protesters last week.
Oh my God. Yeah, Mark signals that he has people who can take care of Eve? What does that mean? It's just horrifying that his goal now is to keep people alive but paralyzed for experimenting on, for interrogation, for who knows what. Levy drops through a portal to escape, and how little Omni-Man cares about this escape should signal to us how vulnerable Viltrumites are to universal tech, like they're completely unaware of it, or that he fully knows what it is and doesn't care because he can kill everyone anyway. So we cut back to our Mark in our universe. Revisiting the cliffside spot, Omni-Man pounded blood out of him in season 1. His blood is still on the rock. It's been about a month and still it's there. Radiohead's Karma Police plays over this, and while Creep is many people's go-to Radiohead track, I think Karma Police is a better song. It's a song about stress, carrying guilt after doing something wrong, and just feeling that everyone is looking at you sideways, that karma's gonna get you. Like the chorus is, "This is what you'll get when you mess with us." And I like how this both frames Mark as the Karma Police, but really he is doing this policing to stave off the real Karma Police that he feels like is bearing down on him. He's on this kind of penance montage, going rogue to do good deeds. He soars past this woman in a headscarf. Remember, we saw this woman's alternate universe self in the opening sequence, helping a man to his feet. He stops the villain Elephant. Elephant appeared in season 1, episode 5. And yeah, having a loose trunk, it's kind of like having a cape. It's just kind of a liability that your combatants can grab onto and toss you around. Mark stops an armed chase. This time we don't even see Mark do anything. The engine just kind of disappears and the pieces fall at their feet from above. It's kind of like this, and then his transporting that ambulance. Mark does not want to be seen. He doesn't want the credit. He's just doing this for himself. He's wrestling with an invisible force of karma. He's not even doing it for validation. The bank robbers are Tether Tyrant and Mag Maniac. We saw them both in season 1, episode 5 when they worked for Machine Head and they fought Mark and the teen team. Mark quickly though flashes back to the season 1 finale when he was smashed through that subway car as he was bathed in blood and guts, and he's like, you know what? Let the police and the GDA forces handle it. So Mark flies home while his mother Debbie watches a news report about Chicago rebuilding after Omni-Man's attack, and across the street we see a crater left by Omni-Man destroying the house that the GDA was using to monitor him. This is where he killed Donald Ferguson by crushing his spine. So the destruction that Nolan caused wasn't just in the urban center, it is literally outside their front door. A desert lizard crawls up to a bone in the sand above the GDA prison facility. It kind of looks like a human femur, so presumably these lasers have fried past individuals escaping or individuals trying to spring others free. This is where the Mauler twins were locked up at the end of season 1, and we catch up with them here. They harass their guard Pete about the quality of the food. This is the same guard whose arm they broke when they escaped in season 1, episode 3, and later in episode 8 we see the guy still had to show up to work despite his injuries. In another cell further down the line are these guys. This is Paul, duplicates younger twin brother. We saw him in season 1, episode 3, back when there were far more than 4 of them locked up, and we're still not sure why they're in prison though. Big holiday feasts aren't just about what's on the table, they're about the whole experience, the company, the decorations, the vibe, for lack of a better word. Running an online business is similar. Offering a quality product isn't enough, you want to make sure things are just right, and for that, there's Squarespace. Squarespace is an all-in-one platform that provides you with everything you need to do whatever you need with your website. Squarespace has templates and designs for pretty much everything, so even if you're making your very first website, using Squarespace makes it super easy to customize your look, update content, and add features to fit your unique needs. For instance, Squarespace makes it easy easy to sell merch. You can design your products, then save time and money by letting Squarespace handle production, inventory, and shipping. And if you're selling any other kind of physical goods, digital goods, or even a service, Squarespace makes it easy to build your storefront and grow your business. To check it out for yourself, head to squarespace.com for a free trial, and when you're ready to launch, go to squarespace.com/newrockstars to save 10% off your first purchase of a website or a domain. The Maulers go through Levy's portals to another universe where this prison is in a crater, and one steps on the charred skeleton of a GDA agent, and here in this dimension, the same green lizard crawls around. The Maulers deduce that Angstrom needed a crater deep enough to extract them from their subterranean prison in the original universe. And that tells us that whenever a portal is open across the universe, it's in the same exact spot in three-dimensional space on that planet. So that would mean when Angstrom dropped out of his portal in the opening scene, it was to a reality where there is an even deeper underground hideout. We go back to Reginald VelJohnson High School, named after Reginald VelJohnson, the actor from Family Matters and Die Hard, who voices the principal on the show and will come back to voice the principal this season. Everyone in the hallway stares at Mark, and even though we don't hear Karma Police here, that is what Karma Police is about. But they don't know he's invincible or what he has really gone through. They just think that his father, Nolan, died. And the bully Todd, who fought Mark in the series pilot, he returns here, but just to hug Mark to prove he's not an asshole. We saw something similar with Flash Thompson and Peter Parker after Uncle Ben died in the 2012 The Amazing Spider-Man. Amber tries to console Mark, and Mark meets up with Cecil at Burger Mart, where he worked in season 1. Cecil, though, refused to put Mark back in field so soon.
You can't stop me. I don't need your permission to be a superhero.
You know who else said that to me?
Back at the Pentagon, we see the parking in rear sign as we saw in the first season. It's a bit taken directly from the comics. Cecil talks with Donald Ferguson, who was killed by Omni-Man, but in the comics, this character is a robot. So perhaps they're doing something similar here, kind of like with Agent Coulson returning in Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. after Loki stabbed him in the back in Avengers 2012. At first, it was revealed a result of Project Tahiti, and later, Coulson returned as a life model decoy version of himself. Ferguson says,
They could really use Invincible.
Yeah, he pauses before he says it. Like, even in this universe, they're still playing this little game with us, the viewer. The city is being terrorized by the Giant, who's a red-skinned kaiju from the Invincible comics, who's really an 8-year-old who just fell through a dimensional portal with his grandmother and got enchanted by a cruel wizard. That's why he's stupid and angry and wants to be both president and astronaut. Rex, Duplicate, Monster Girl, Shrinking Ray, Black Samson, and Robot, his new body inside of the robot shell, a body cloned from Rex's DNA, they all struggle to deal with a threat that should be pretty easy to handle. Rudy realizes there's a parking garage beneath the Giant and sets demo charges that Rex ends up having to blow up. So again, we see the solution to the problem in this episode is always to go even deeper. Angstrom shows the Maulers what he's been building.
That's one of our somatic encoders, but bigger. I based it off your design. It reads, copies, and writes human minds.
And Angstrom explains.
There's an infinite number of dimensions, and I was born with the ability to access all of them.
Yes, in these green portals, you can see what looks like the ruins of a cityscape from the opening scene, and then another with some kind of like ancient ruins that look like a Salvador Dali painting. He goes on.
All our problems, famine, war, climate change, cancer, have been solved somewhere else.
Yeah, notice how he singles out famine, war, climate change, cancer. These are the same kind of problems that Mark in the other universe posed to the people of Earth, promising that Viltrum could solve. It's like we're getting two sources of power from off Earth, making the same kind of devil's bargain. Angstrom says,
And I can be the conduit of that knowledge. A Prometheus who raises the bar for everyone by sharing what works.
Yes, Prometheus, the titan from Greek mythology who stole fire from the gods to give the first spark of technology to mankind. But what he forgets about that mythological story is that Prometheus was tortured for his theft for all eternity. Angstrom reveals his safe house is filled with dozens of alternate selves, including some who are women and one who has 3 eyes and 4 arms on his torso. Since he just wants to take their knowledge of their home dimensions and not share his vision of putting it all together, we get the sense that Angstrom is somewhat dishonest, kind of a ends justify the means type of guy. Olga waits for Debbie with a knife making stroganoff, and Debbie at first thinks she's there to hurt her due to Omni-Man killing Red Rush, so she is also haunted by the Karma Police. Debbie recalls Rome having good pizza before realizing Rome was a trip Nolan took her on in season 1, the episode right before she realized he killed the Guardians of the Globe by finding his blood-covered suit. Debbie is still reeling from Nolan saying she was just a pet to him and that holding it inside has been like acid eating her away until she's hollow. And when Mark comes home, we see the kitchen from his perspective that they have multiple bottles of wine out and that Debbie filled her glass glass all the way up to the brim, which is something that you only do with wine after it's like your 4th or 5th glass and you just stop caring how much you pour. Cecil chews out the heroes for their failure with the giant, saying it's a failure of leadership from Rudy, who has been struggling with his new body and the physiological fear that he cannot help but emit. Cecil assigns the resurrected Immortal to take charge. He also adds to the team Bulletproof, who's voiced by Jay Farrow. In the comics, Bulletproof, aka Zendali Randolph, actually takes up the mantle of Invincible at one point, so we'll see what happens with this. Mark worries to Eve that he could become his dad and not even know it. See, that's the fear, not making the wrong ethical choice, but not knowing whether the choice has already been made for you or not. Mark offers to help Cecil right when they realize the Maulers' warehouse energy levels have gone off the charts. So on Angstrom's machine, you can actually see one of his variants is tattered clothes and bionic parts, like maybe a survivor from some futuristic war reality. The Maulers say that this machine is connecting to the 9 other machines in other dimensions, so there are 10 of them in total, and they say 1,000 minds are synced, so that would mean 100 variants per machine. It's just interesting that the number is 1,000. According to books like Malcolm Gladwell's The Tipping Point, the human mind can only occupy 150 other personalities, names, identities in their head at any given time. If Fortune 500 companies apply this to how they grow and scale their businesses, that anytime you have more than 150 people working in a workspace, it's time to build another branch. So having 1,000 minds in your mind forced in there at any given time would make you crazy. Our Angstrom says,
I am large and I contain multitudes.
Yes, this is a quote from a Walt Whitman poem, Song of Myself, section 51. The full passage goes, do I contradict myself? Very well, then I contradict myself. I am large, I contain multitudes. The idea that people and their thoughts can evolve and change. And even though we might have internal contradictions, it is the sum of all of our experiences that help us make choices. Angstrom is now grappling with the multitudes of 1,000 versions of himself flooding into his mind. Mark arrives and the Maulers say,
no way he lives up to his name. He's definitely not invincible.
Again, they're toying with the convention of using the word in context versus cutting to the title card. When will they do it? It's coming up soon. Angstrom calls in some backup, Maulers from other dimensions who have been helping as well. Our Maulers are not happy to see that. After all, they already argue over who is the clone and who is the original among the two of them. They have trust issues.
You were using other us's? You said we were special.
The Maulers from other dimensions have different outfits. There's a version with masks and some sort of turtle shell on the back, a Mauler with a beard and cybernetic parts, and at least one female She-Hulk style Mauler. Mark tries to use his speed to subdue them, but their strength is too much, and it becomes a literal bloodbath.
I won't build my utopia with blood.
But the thing is, assuming Mark is... The Maulers would make him bleed and bleed, but, you know, he might not actually die. So Angstrom is kind of making this choice for the wrong reason. He takes off his headpiece and the machine explodes. And in the flames, you can see the Maulers' bodies incinerating down to their skeletons. Only Mark is left. And when the heroes show up, Rex says,
I guess he really is invincible.
Not yet. Mark comes home and the 2 wine bottles that were on the counter the night before are now open and empty, and Debbie's glass is spilled on the counter. You know, not that Debbie doesn't have a reason to drink, but you know, there's a lot of red flags here. Let's keep an eye on it. Amber and Mark open their letters from Upstate University at the same time. Remember, this is a campus they toured in season 1 and they both get accepted. Immortal tells Mark,
Cecil thinks you're on our side. I'm not so sure.
The Karma Police is now literalized with a watchdog who seems to be able to see into Mark's soul. And we leave it there until the post-credit scene where a deformed Mauler discovers Angstrom.
It made me a freak. He killed so many people I knew, people I loved. Millions died because of him.
Yeah, Mauler says that Angstrom's memories are all scrambled, but Angstrom says they are all his memories and that he wants revenge.
I won't rest until I've killed!
And as that blood gets wiped away, a crack forms in the word invincible. So we learned this episode was an origin story for Angstrom Levy, who did first appear in Invincible Comics number 16, and he was a multiversal figure. And I just love how this Angstrom cannot assign victim or perpetrator roles because he just has too many memories, too many identities scrambled together in his mind. And this was not Mark's doing, it was Angstrom's own fault. And it was his own empathy that did it. So imagine when he realizes that empathy was the culprit here. He's kind of like Kate Blanchett from Crystal Skull if her head didn't explode. He's put himself on a path to kill someone who literally cannot be killed. At least I don't think so. Invincible doesn't fear death anymore. He fears what he might become. I'm so excited to break down every episode of this season. Please support New Rockstars by grabbing one of these Loki-inspired shirts from nerdriot.shop. If you live in the LA area, be sure to grab some tickets for our live show on November 16th. Big thanks to Erik Owusu, Eric Francisco, and Brandon Barrick for helping me write this breakdown. Subscribe to all 3 of the channels in the Rockstars network. You can follow me at EA Voss. Thanks for watching. I'll see you next time. Bye.